And we continue on that theme and our Africa conversation. Now we are joined by the University of the Free State Vice-Rector, Professor Puleng LenkaBula. Prof, good evening and thank you for your time. Thank you so much for joining us as we talk Africa Day and with a look at the continent and its response to the pandemic. Has Africa been adequately included in the global response to COVID-19?
Thank you very much, Thabo. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'd first like to acknowledge the National Heritage Council that has made this a possibility for us to engage on the questions. I want to start first by saying COVID-19 must be understood not only as a health crisis that our society and continent is facing, but it must be seen in context of the globalization, the hegemony and contestations of political, economic power, as well as marginalization. It would seem to me that today, when we celebrate Africa Day, we must take into cognizance that the eruption of COVID happened at a time when African nations, African societies, and African states are contending with their place in the global arena. For instance, the economic systems, whereas Africa is entrenched in the global economic system, whereas it contributes the biotic resources of our society, which are often used in multiple sectors. In this instance, many of its people have been negatively affected by coronavirus, partly because this is a disease that is not yet known, whose epidemiological or medical understanding is still at a nascent stage, but at the same time, which has also elicited some contestations between global countries that are seen to have some economic might, the United States of America and China. But I also want to say, perhaps in the contemporary histories of South Africa, the African continent, and during this onslaught of COVID-19, the question of Africa's future has never been more relevant and urgent. This is precisely because although Africa is not homogeneous, it's not singular, it's not monolith, and it is important to understand that in spite of the changes and the boundaries of economic, social, cultural, geographic, and historical experiences, the massive changes that are taking place, that we should understand that these transformations invite us to attend to this. I'm of the view that the fact that it's surfacing in 2020 and that many countries were not ready attests to the contradictions of our readiness to attending to the most urgent questions of our times, not only as Africans, but also as the global community.
But Prof, why do you think our heritage, that 57-year-old heritage, is not paying dividends? The rich cultural heritage that we have in our medicines and in our ability to bring roots and plants and put them together. Why is it not paying off at a time of a pandemic of this nature?
I must confess that I doubt that is not because our heritage of knowledge systems, endogenous and indigenous knowledge systems, has not been beneficial. I'm of the view that in a world that has predicated the maximization of profit, that has to a large extent privatized health systems and access to health systems, including in the African continent, the knowledge systems, not just the roots, because African knowledge systems and indigenous heritage are not just in the oral cultures, in the trinkets or in the roots, but actually complex, sophisticated medicinal inventions have been made available. And at a time when Madagascar, for instance, posited that they had some medicinal concoction that they felt could mediate the negative impacts of COVID, a lot of people actually laughed. But what we did not do is that we did not take into cognizance that oftentimes the innovations of Africa are appropriated in the biotic sphere, but also by pharmaceutical companies. You'll remember that when in South Africa we were debating the HIV pandemic and the questions of diet, of medicine, of health and well-being, and of trying to ensure that there is a balanced system beyond just the medical approaches. There were many contestations, and there was a sense of negating that food systems, food security, food sovereignty were interlinked with health. And it is only at a later point that we recognize that we should have actually created balanced systems where Africa's knowledge systems intersect with the knowledge systems and coexist with these knowledge systems in finding the solutions to the problems.
All right.